Been with CrowdStrike for about 3.5 years now. Prior to that, I was the Chief Information Security Officer for the state of Oklahoma. Also served as the Chief Operating Officer in Oklahoma, the state CIO for education agencies. Also did a little stint as the Chief Procurement Officer for technology for the state. So I've been in a lot of your shoes, and gives me an interesting perspective. I'll just say that. How about that? Let's see. Did the poll pop up, Olivia? I haven't seen it. Let's see.
Yes, it did. It is live
There
in
it
the
is.
chat.
Awesome. So one of the things I really want to do, and we'll just take a couple seconds here. If you haven't selected your option yet, please do so. And I guess maybe I should participate too. One of the main things I wanted to do was make sure you understood that each one of these areas actually has a significant amount of pressure behind it to roll AI tool sets out, right? Whether that's budget oriented or just service oriented, there are expectations in each of these areas. So I want to make sure that we're kind of thinking through what I'm going to be the wet blanket of the session today, apparently. What are the worst things that could possibly happen? And I do want to just kind of point out, it is very different. Cybersecurity is different when it comes to AI than what you would typically see, right? It looks a whole lot more like fraud. So, and we'll run through just a couple scenarios. I promise I'm not going to PowerPoint you to death. I actually only have, I think, like 3 or 4 slides here. So let's start with scenario number 1. You can see I've actually got a timeline on here to try to keep me on track. So in 7 minutes, we're going to move on to the debrief here. But I do want to kind of think about this. So we've got 2 scenarios. The first is a state and local AI service delivery scenario. The second one, we'll do something in higher ed just because I want to wear my professor hat for a minute. But in this scenario, we have a state that has rolled out some sort of an AI agent to enable constituent-facing services for SNAP or TANF or Medicaid, one of these eligibility services, right? And what that agent is doing is helping classify the applications that come through, maybe flagging the incomplete applications, prioritizing urgent cases so they get to the top of the pile faster, and maybe even routing cases to the eligibility workers for them to get into. Sounds great, right? Let's think about it from a threat perspective. So prompt manipulation is probably the biggest thing, or a prompt injection attack is what we call it in cybersecurity. It's probably the biggest risk that we have here, followed by really data drift, right? If you don't understand how the model works, then it's possible that you'll wind up with responses that you're not expecting is really what it comes down to. So, but if you had an adversary that was able to do prompt injection attacks, and I actually have a cool escape room link that I should probably drop in the chat here for you guys. But if you have an adversary that's doing prompt injection, you're going to wind up with situations where, you know, you've got misclassification on edge cases. You've got maybe delays for certain applicants. I mean, really, where you get to is where possibly you might have individuals who are getting eligibility services that they're not entitled to. Or the flip side, which may actually be worse, is folks who need those services, who are eligible for them, who are no longer getting them because of the data drift that happens within the model. This is why I say it looks a whole lot more like fraud. There's not like a breach event, right? You know, in cybersecurity, we've gotten really good at incident response. We understand when something bad happens, these are the things that we need to go do. Oh, Grace went ahead and dropped it in there. So there's the chat for the escape room. Cool game. But what you wind up with is a situation where maybe a year down the road, 2 years down the road, you start noticing that you have the wrong people that are participating in the program, or maybe there's been payouts that you weren't expecting, and now you have to go back through multiple years of logs to figure out what actually happened. Probably the other thing that's really bad for states is if this starts happening, you're absolutely going to get Freedom of Information Act requests. You're absolutely going to get media inquiries about it. And it kind of goes back to that initial thing that we heard Petra talking about in terms of trust, right? So now you're starting to degrade the trust in the services that you're providing. while we kind of thought about it in terms of making things faster, making things easier, this is an administrative function, right? This is actually something that, because it's helping to route requests and look at eligibility for requests, this is actually a due process kind of thing. And so we really need to understand how the AI works, and how it's making decisions around each one of the applications that's coming through, or whatever function that AI agent is serving, right? So I want to come back and do just kind of an interactive prompt. And I know we don't have the mics turned on, but if you'll just kind of drop it in the chat, and based off whichever role you're in. So if you're a CIO, where do you think this AI should sit architecturally? And probably more importantly, what should it not be able to get to? As a CISO, if you're on the security side of the thing, what are the minimal controls that you have to have in place that would have prevented this? Procurement folks, you're the front line here. What contract clauses do we think we're missing at this point? And the policy folks, what due process obligations are now exposed? If you want to just drop your answers in the chat here, we can kind of talk through those a little bit. No access to data, no access to rules. Great, Jerry. Absolutely.
Well, duh. It's just a front end thing.
Hey, it sounds like the mics are working, Olivia. Even better, if you guys want to come off mute, we can talk for just a minute before we move on to the next one. Prompt injection and human in the loop QC. Good, Jamie. Yep. Joe, you got anything? Oh, I made him shy. So again, these are just some different things you need to be thinking about as we start rolling out really citizen-facing or constituency-facing services, whether that's a chatbot or some sort of an AI agent. Again, you really need to understand really what should you be separating it from? What can you allow it to do? How is it making decisions? All things you need to keep in mind. Let's move on to the second scenario here, Olivia. So we've got a higher education institution, or maybe it's a K-12 school district. And they're starting to use AI-enabled bots, whether maybe it's an AI agent for financial aid, or maybe even admissions, right? So now, again, we're doing some administrative things here. Maybe it's a Gen AI chatbot for answering FAFSA questions or aid eligibility. What are the deadlines, administration's questions, those types of things, right? These are going to be public facing, high volume, and really high stress for the end user, right? These are things that are very important to students as they're trying to get admitted or trying to figure out how they're going to pay for college. So there's high profile, high stress. And some of the things that you may not think about is, I mean, the AI. Oops, sorry. Do I have somebody? If you're working directly with the public on these types of things, we're talking about the impact to equity, access, compliance, and even trust again, right? Let's see. Olivia, do we have somebody asking a question?
I don't think so, but I'm going to keep looking in the chat here.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so let's think about it from a threat standpoint, right? So we've got, again, probably some sort of manipulation through a prompt injection. And again, I'm going to plug the escape room game. It's really interesting to see how easy it is to actually get through. But through a prompt injection, you could actually get the AI to give incorrect eligibility guidance. It may do some sort of hallucination, right? We've all heard about the AI hallucinations, but it also may do bias amplification, right? So where maybe there's bias built into the data set that it's using to make decisions. These are things that, especially in higher education, we're worried about those types of things. But then even past that, it becomes a legal thing, right? We've got some legal exposure if you've got misrepresentation or disparate impact through those interactions. So it's not really just a cybersecurity scenario at that point. Right now, we're thinking about service delivery, we're thinking about governance and civil rights even as we get into this, right? So much broader, and again, kind of repeats some of the themes that we heard from some of our previous speakers. Let's spend just a minute to do a little bit more interaction here. And I don't know if the emojis are going to work here, but for each statement, let's go through and vote yes, no, or maybe not yet for your organization. So if you're thinking about this scenario, or we could really probably apply it to the state scenario as well, do you think that this system can run without continuous human review? Yes, no, or not yet? Because not yet's always a good answer, right? Feel free to do the emojis or just toss it in the chat here. No, no, no. Let's see. Whole lot of no's, couple of not yet's. And Jonathan's being non-committal. No, not yet. And again, I don't know that there's a right answer here at this point. This is just kind of to get us thinking about it. So let's move on to the second one. So accuracy matters more than explainability here. No, not yet, or yes. Getting some yes. Getting a few yeses. Okay. AI should be explainable. I agree. I would love it if we could do that. Both are important. Good, good. All right, let's move on to the third question then. So, and this is going to ring true for the procurement folks that are participating here. So this should be procured as software, not a service. Yes, no, or not yet. Getting some no's. How about that? All right, last one. The institution owns the model risk, not the vendor. Yes, no, or not yet. Not yet. Both. Yeah, so I mentioned there's probably not a right answer right now. It's really going to depend on your organization, but I do kind of just want to run through a couple of notes here. So on the first question where we're talking about the system can run without continuous human review, what we're really asking here is this an informational service or an adjudicative service, right? So are we letting this thing just give information out, or are we letting it actually make some decisions? Definitely something we need to think about. The second one, accuracy matters more than explainability. What we're really asking here is, can you justify the outcomes to the public and any regulators that you have to interact with, right? The third one, this should be procured as software, not a service. What we're asking here is who owns this, right? Who owns the model behavior, the updates, and ultimately the risk associated with this, this new tool. In our fourth one here, the institution owns the risk model, not the vendor. What we're really kind of thinking about here is who the public and the courts will hold accountable. So definitely things to kind of be thinking about as we look at rolling out these types of services and tools. So what do we agree on and what do we not? So again, we'll do a little bit of interaction here, and I know we're getting close on time here, Olivia. So AI service delivery alignment questions. First one, where does AI stop? AI stop in the workflow? Again, is it just providing information, or is it actually making decisions on what information is provided? When it's wrong, who's the throat to choke? Is it going to be your vendor? Is it going to be the state agency? Is it going to be the higher education institution? What role within those organizations? What decisions require explainability by law or policy? This is a big one, guys. A lot of the folks that are building these AI capabilities, it's very much a black box. They don't understand, because just the sheer volume of data points, they don't understand how the AI is making the decisions. So where can that fit in your organization as you're looking to automate services using AI? And the last one, this is your Skynet question, right? How do we suspend or exit the system safely? These are fun conversations to start looking at. There's a lot of new articles out and blog posts around what happens when you try to turn these things off. The last thing I'm going to ask you guys to do is drop a one-word response in the chat for this question. In your mind, what is the hardest question to answer right now for your organization when it comes to AI? Why? Nice, Beth. Olivia, either they're thinking really hard or I've lost them. Here we go.
You may have stumped
benefit?
them.
Legal questions. Yep, Joe. Accountability. Who wants the risk? Governance. Kate gets a gold star. Ultimately, that's what all of this comes down to, right? How do you govern? And in my mind, governance is how you make decisions and prioritize infinite requests with finite resources, right? Governance is huge. Policy and what meets security requirements, how to ensure users are only getting safe and approved AI tools, responsibility, accountability, need versus benefit, business problems. There you go, Bill. Let's not just do technology for technology's sake. AI governance, ethics. This is great, guys. I hope you've been able to kind of think about this a little bit differently just in the short amount of time we've been together. I do have just a couple of operational takeaways for you before we bounce back to the broader group. As you start thinking about AI in public service, again, cyber incidents aren't going to look like they usually do, right? They're going to look a whole lot more like fraud, but typically they're originating because there's a governance gap somewhere. We've made some decisions that maybe we didn't have all the information on, or maybe we didn't have the right protections in place from a legal standpoint or from a procurement standpoint. These are things that we need to kind of keep in the forefront of our mind. Service delivery AI should optimize process, not outcomes. So think about the processes you have. This is just like any other automation, right? You can automate a really bad process, and you're not going to go a whole lot. Work on the process first. Use AI to help with the process, and maybe at least initially, let's not have it making decisions around who gets what. And the procurement language, I mentioned it earlier. Procurement is now the front line for security and policy control. So let's start thinking about what clauses need to be put in our contracts to better protect our organizations. The last thing I'll leave you with is, and you heard Jen talk about it in North Carolina, the fastest AI programs in government are the ones that decide where AI is not allowed. Do that early in your process. There are going to be areas where it makes sense to use AI, but there's a lot of areas where it makes sense not to use it. identify those right out the gate. Use those to help structure your governance framework. And I think that's all I've got for you today.
Matt, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm sure it was just as useful to our group as much as it was to me.
I hope so. Thank you for having me. And I'll stick around in case anybody has questions. But I know we're going to be headed back to the main room here in just a moment.
Thank you all. Thank you, Matt.